Product provided by Nintendo. 2025 is drawing to a close, and we've had a smorgasbord of amazing games this year. So here are my top 5 games of the year, my favorite games that I have played. And here's a brief spoiler. Expedition 33 isn't my number 1. Hello, everybody. It's your boy Jmulls, and we have a lot to talk about. Coming in at number 5 for me is Metroid Prime 4. Now, this isn't an overly amazing game or anything like that. I think it's solidly good. My experience with Metroid overall is rather limited, but right before Prime 4 came out, I went back to play Prime Remastered. And I do think overall, I prefer Prime 4. I think the active shooting was more enjoyable in Prime 4. I think the bosses were massively improved coming from Prime 1. And also, if you play this game with HDR and 4K, my god, the visuals in this game and the lighting and the use of color, some of Nintendo's best work of all time. It's so dang good and pretty to look at. And I think the reason this game doesn't make it any higher in this list and just scrapes in at the 5 slot for me is because there's a few design choices that to me are utterly baffling as to how this ever got off the ground room floor. I do not know who checked off that desert. I don't know why they thought to include it. The desert itself acts as a hub area in between all the actual levels. Okay. Whatever. My problem is what you do in the desert. One, the desert is basically just a giant square. There's really not much to it outside of a few, little shrine-like areas. If you're familiar with, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, there's little shrine areas. Not too many of them, only a handful, but they are there. And again, those are fine. But the main thing you're doing in the desert is collecting green crystals. And you do this not just for a few minutes. No, you do this for actual hours. Because one of the final things you have to do in the main story is fill up this gauge, and it requires actual hours of grinding green crystals in the desert. And the gameplay loop is so dull and uninteresting, you're just riding your motorcycle into these things ad nauseum. I don't know how this got off like a whiteboard in production, but it kills and nukes any desire that I have to ever replay this game. Much like the Chozo artifacts of Prime 1. Now, I know I just kind of tore into this game, so you may be asking, well, if it's this bad, why is it even in your top 5 games? Well, because everything that isn't that, and some of the characters lackluster at best. I don't think they're ruining the experience or anything. They're just bland and uninteresting and really not memorable. Everything else is fun. Shit, the level design is overly linear. That is an issue. But the actual gameplay loop of fighting all the various mobs you encounter, the boss fights as well, the visuals, the music when it's there, because the desert just doesn't have music. Those elements make the game worth playing at least once. Those are the elements to where if I ever come back to replay this game, it would be because of the act of shooting enemies, because of the act of going through these levels and reading all the data logs and scanning all the items, getting all that pieces of lore to put together. I like Vuros as a location. I like the story that was told there. I really like the ending. The boss fights are absolutely incredible. I had a ton of fun with them. The only reason this game isn't in the 4 spot for me is because those reasons from before, the desert, the lackluster characters, they hold the game back. But the reason this game even makes my list to begin with is because shooting things and just looking around the place was a ton of fun. But now let's get into the part of the list where it's nothing but straight bangers. Come on, people, it's time for Banana Slammer. Donkey Kong Bonanza isn't only one of my favorite games of the year, I think it might be my favorite 3D platformer that I've ever played, if we're not counting Sly Cooper. Donkey Kong Bonanza, oh my god, they cooked with this thing. The music, incredible. The visuals, incredible. I love the pairing of the characters of Donkey Kong and Pauline, where Pauline was able to act as the voice of DK, but even despite the fact DK just made monkey noises the entire game, he still had a personality, and it's DK. I love the new DK redesign. Initially, when I first saw trailers for this game, I didn't think I was going to like it that much. Then I played the game, and it just works. The environments are very nice to look at. The gameplay, super satisfying and fun. It's so nice to be able to punch anything and everything. I love the Bonanza forms, and I love how the music changes when you utilize a Bonanza form. It gives you so much utility to navigate and to explore that it's just so dang fun to me, and it's so fun to revisit previous locations with a lot of these later power-ups and just seeing how you can morph and shape the map to your own will, being able to punch through mountains or dig holes. The Bonanza forms are all fun. The boss fights are enjoyable as well. The game has a great pace to it, and the story is great. And my god, again, the music. Donkey Kong Bonanza was truly an amazing experience from start to finish. And when it ended, I was just of the opinion that I want them to make another. I mean, I didn't play the DLC or anything like that, but I want another Bonanza game just like this because it was so dang fun. And I had really distanced myself from a lot of like platforming games over the last like 10 years or so, just because they weren't really in my wheelhouse anymore. Like the PlayStation 3D platformers of old really got me back in the day when I was first getting into gaming. But Donkey Kong Bonanza just made me feel like that kid again, playing Spyro the Dragon, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank for the very first time. It's such a well-constructed, well thought out, well put together experience that is just so fun and enjoyable. There's no glaring weakness here. There just isn't. Every level feels different to each other in like a good way. And even then, every level feels largely multi-layered, at least the big ones, to where there's like, it's not just a forest level. There's more there as you continue to explore. And I really appreciated that diversity in aesthetics, and it always kept the pace feeling engaging to me. Always made you feel as if you were making some kind of progress and going to some other new location. It felt like an adventure. It just felt like a fun Saturday morning cartoon that I got to play. It had a great pace to it. The upgrades you got were really enjoyable, and again, well paced to when you got them. If you wish to explore and get like all the collectibles, that was fun as well. And if you just wanted to move on to the next section, you can do that as well. The game really did enforce you to play any one way at least for the most part. If you wanted to be a guy who wanted 100% the game, you could do that. And if you wanted to be someone who just wanted to play the main story and get the bare minimum, you can do that. Sure, is that necessarily like a new thing for 3D platformers? Not particularly. It's just done so well here because the core mechanics and the core gameplay loop of Donkey Kong Bonanza is just so dang fun, and it's paired with a really fun story with great characters, villains that I ended up caring way more about than I was thinking I was going to when I went into the game. And like I said before, it's just a great adventure. From start to finish, Donkey Kong Bonanza is a masterpiece. And now it's time for the RPGs. Trails in the Sky First Chapter is one of the best examples of how to do a faithful remake of a traditional JRPG that I've ever seen. The story is essentially identical to the original. However, the way they make this additive is by inserting a whole bunch of conversations between the characters as you're navigating the overworld. It doesn't change the script. It doesn't change how the characters look or feel. It just gives these characters more moments to shine. And in a story like Trails in the Sky First Chapter, I think that is so important because the plot is slow by design. Trails is one of the longest running JRPG series out there. Each game itself is very long, and there's a lot of them. This is the game that began it all. So they elect to have the plot be rather slow, but focus more on world building and especially characters and character development and showcasing these big, colorful characters interact with each other frequently. And they do an expert job at this. I love every character in this game. They're just fun to have on the screen, and as you go from one chapter to the next, I feel sad for largely losing, at least for a time, the characters of that chapter, but I immediately become excited to learn and to be introduced to the new characters in the next chapter. Now, right before Trails in the Sky First Chapter came out, I played the original, and honestly, it's about a 50-50 whether or not I prefer the original or this version, because I think both games do a great job at what they're trying to be and what they can do at the time they come out. And I think when it comes to this game, the remake, it doesn't do modernization in the idea that it feels the need to change things for absolutely no reason. No, it just largely portrays a lot of those scenes that you had to visualize in your head back in the day because of the technological restraints that the original operated under. So you imagined how a lot of these scenes looked in your head. They're able to actually animate them here. And I quite like the voice acting in this game because it feels to me like a mid-2000s anime dub, which has like that perfect amount of like jank and also exaggerated emotional portrayal, where I think it just works for the type of story and the type of characters that Trails in the Sky First Chapter have.
That's where you're wrong.
But this game is so much more than just a slow plot with good characters. It's really funny, the cutscenes are very nice, but also, oh my god, the gameplay. There is something weirdly addictive about Trails combat. I love the original style, and I love the version here in the remake as well. So, how does it play? It is a turn-based, grid-based system, or at least that was what it was in the original. Here, it's still turn-based, but you can freely move during your turn, depending upon how much movement you actually have. So you can position yourself and then use an actual ability called a craft or an art. You're balancing and managing these various turn buffs that characters get, stealing some from opponents to give yourself a power-up on your next turn. And Trails does something that one of my other favorite games of the last few years, Metaphor ReFantazio, did so well, because I'm pretty sure Metaphor ReFantazio just took it from other Trails games, and that is real-time combat in the overworld to weaken enemies, or to just kill very weak enemies, and then you transition into turn-based combat for either boss fights or for fights that are actually around your level. My god, I love that system so freaking much. It makes navigating the overworld not a pain in the butt because you're not being like stopped every few feet because you run into a mob that's kind of invisible in the overworld. No, if you just simply want to go from point A to B, you can do that. But if you want to stop and get some levels or kill some mobs, you can do that as well. And if the mobs aren't particularly like powerful and they're just kind of cannon fodder, you spam the real-time combat, which feels super satisfying because the animations in this game are god tier, by the way. You face roll over those mobs and then maybe you find something that is actually worth your time. So you can stun them, weaken them, then transition into turn-based combat, and because you weaken them in the real-time combat, you get to do a bit of extra damage, and you're in a better position for the rest of the fight. It's a game that does such a great job of making you feel powerful one moment, and then putting you on the back foot the next. But not in this weird, like, yo-yo kind of way. No, if a fight is gonna be hard, you kind of know immediately what you're in for. And they do a great job of balancing, oh, these mobs are meant to be kind of easy, these will take a bit of thought, and this boss fight is about to mess you up. It's like building your characters with the augment system that is very reminiscent to the materia system of like older Final Fantasy games, equipping them with various gear. It's basic, but there's costumes in this game, and it's just really funny to be able to like change the hair color of certain characters, or the outfit color, or to give certain characters like cat ears. It's just dumb fun, but the actual main combat is so fun and addictive. And I don't mind a slow plot, so I didn't mind the story in Trails in the Sky first chapter, and I'm making my way through second chapter right now. And yeah, I'm glad the story of first chapter is constructed in this way, because we needed this foundational work to be done for this story. And I think first chapter does such a great job at that. And then when you get to the final bits of the game, my god, it goes into like maximum overdrive and just feels as if it takes all those things that it was developing over the course of the game up to that point when it comes to characters and plot lines and just brings them all back. It's super rewarding. And if you're a fan of JRPGs, you owe it to yourself to try out Trails in the Sky. It is amazing.
I didn't make the rules between you two.
Expedition 33. I mean, what else is there to even say about this game that hasn't been said? This game is winning awards rightfully so, left and right. It's an absolutely phenomenal piece of work. It is a giant love letter to a whole bunch of different JRPGs, and it finds such a creative and fun way to integrate a lot of individual elements from a lot of other JRPGs into one cohesive package. There is no weakness in this game. It just doesn't exist. The music is incredible. The art is mesmerizing and colorful and beautiful to look at. And for a game that is largely about painting, yeah, you kind of have to nail that part, and it does. Really good enemy variety. Great combat. Like, the turn-based combat in Expedition 33 is so much dang fun. I love how all the characters feel different. However, with the way that the skill points work and operate and the way you can, like, build each of these characters, they feel flexible enough. I personally love the dodging and parrying, primarily the parrying. It's risk-reward, but when you get it right, man, it feels so satisfying, and it makes even standard basic fights feel as if they bring something interesting to the table, and as if you can demonstrate your progression in skill as the game goes on by continuing to get better at even fighting these basic enemies. There's fun side content to do, like jumping puzzles and stuff like that, acquiring various outfits for the characters, like baguette outfits. I love how it leans into the French memes. The game's able to poke fun at itself, but still tell a really engaging and interesting narrative from start to finish that is well-paced, has plenty of twists and turns, but all of them feel as if they fit, and there's plenty of foreshadowing for pretty much everything. And like, oh my god, the music, dude! The freaking music in Expedition 33 is legendary! It's so dang good, and easily one of my favorite soundtracks of the modern year. I don't think every party member is like the best character of all time, but there's a couple, right? Like, there's just a few that just are so dang memorable and special for me. I love the characters of Gustave, Verso, Mael, heck, even the feet guy. I love how this game carries itself. I love how this game is overall constructed, and it's just an absolute pleasure to play. In a lot of ways, it feels like a PS1 era Final Fantasy game that is done in the modern day. And I feel as if a lot of people have been asking for even Square Enix to do something like that, because that era of older Final Fantasy had a unique feel to it that a lot of other series from Square Enix don't really get, or they go for their own different thing, which is nothing wrong, by the way. Different series have their own identity, nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people love the old Final Fantasy identity, which is something that Square Enix has largely ignored. But Expedition 33, it's like a blast from the past in all the right ways. And I think it does a great job of showing that that formula is not a relic of the times. It can still work in the modern day, and it can work dang well. And if we're talking about games that are fully new, not a remaster, not a remake, this would be my number one. However, I reserve the right to include what I want. And there's two other things that I had a more, I don't even know what the right word is. I think just a special time with this year. So we need to talk first, before we get to my game of the year, about an honorable mention. Okay, so the reason I have an honorable mention is because these games didn't come out this year, and I'm talking about an overall series. But I had so much fun with these games, I wanted to talk about them here, because in terms of my favorite games that I played in 2025, these are absolutely in this spot. We need to talk about Xeno Saga. Now, for those who don't know, I'm a massive Xenoblade Chronicles fan. It's my favorite game series of all time. But the minds behind Xenoblade actually made a series with a different company before Blade, Xeno Saga. It's a trilogy of JRPGs that are locked to the PlayStation 2. And oh my god, they're so freaking fun, dude! The combat is very different across all three games, and it felt like they were kind of searching for a gameplay identity for the series, and they never really managed to get around to it. I think the closest they got was with Saga 3. But the story of Xeno Saga, 1, it's connected to Xenoblade. 2, it is a trilogy. It's a story where Xeno Saga 1 is the beginning, 2 is the middle, 3's the ending. And the story and the characters flow naturally from one entry into the next, into the final one. And there's like 2 spin-off experiences. Pied Piper, which is a prologue, I guess it's more of a prequel than anything, which elaborates on the backstory of one of the characters named Ziggy. And then you have Missing Year, which is like this flash animation experience thing, because there was a 1-year time skip between Xenosaga 2 and Saga 3, and Missing Year tells the story of, you guessed it, what happened during that missing year. The story of Xenosaga for me is sacred, and I hold it in the highest regard, because just overall, some of the best writing, some of the best characters, some of the best music overall. My god, man. It's like the music in Xeno Saga. I'm always a sucker for songs that have lyrics in them. And when you hear a lyric song in Xeno Saga, 10 out of 10, not even a doubt in my mind. They nail it every time. It's like my biggest complaint with this series is that the combat in Xeno Saga 2 is a bit slow. Like, outside of that, my god, I love all these characters. Not a bad character in sight. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal character development. And the way they're able to tell the story and portray the themes of this narrative going from one game to the next, it's so dang good. It's so dang satisfying. I think it's really hard to explain, but there's just something about the way that Monolith and Takahashi are able to craft a narrative that just grabs me so completely. I think one of the best comparisons that I can make for the story of Xeno Saga is that it feels like Final Fantasy VI in a way to me. What do I mean by that? Where for large parts of Final Fantasy VI, you know that there is a protagonist, but it's not afraid to shift the perspective around a lot to where it largely feels as if the party itself are the protagonists, despite having one or two clear-cut, like, this is the focal character for the story. Xeno Saga operates in a very same way, to where Shion, she is the protagonist, yes, but there's large parts of this narrative where it's not afraid to tell you the story of Momo or Junior, Ziggy for like 2 minutes, etc., etc. And what I think this does is it makes the main party of characters that you'll be traveling around with, that you'll be getting to know, and that you'll see the interactions with, you end up caring so much about those characters because it's not afraid to shift the spotlight onto them, to give them their own time in the sun, to let them stand out, tell their story, to further their story, and also incorporate other characters into that story. And it allows each character to basically feel like a main character by themselves, but they are all together, and it just makes the main party so memorable and so beloved. I mean, at least it did for me. Xeno Saga knows when it needs to get emotional, knows when it needs to get sad, and it can be very, very sad. It can also be very happy and exciting and hype and awesome. I mean, oh my god, the fight choreography in Xeno Saga. Honestly, there's not many other games that I've personally experienced where the choreography and some of the camera work, or even the sense of scale and some of the moments that happen in this story, feel as if they compare to the work done in Xeno Saga. And for a series of, let's call them rather niche JRPGs for the PS2, my god, these games deserve a far better legacy and to be far more remembered than what has happened to them. These games are incredible. They hold up extremely well. It's like the gameplay for Saga 2, like I said, is a bit slow. Whoop-de-doo. For the main story, it's fine. It's just when you get into the post-game content, that becomes a bit of a chore. Outside of that, the combat in both Saga 1 and 3 are stellar. It's really fun. And I think the artwork, the character design, the environments, the lighting, the framing of scenes in Saga 3 is some of the best work I've ever seen done in a video game. And I still think that Xeno Saga Episode 3 is one of the most beautiful games that I've ever had the pleasure of playing. They knocked it out of the park. Bring back Xeno Saga, because these games deserve to be remembered and more people should have the ability to play these games. And maybe you fall in love with them just like I have. Who knows? I can't play the game for you. I can just tell you how special they were for me. And now for my game of the year. And this may not come as a surprise, especially if you watch a lot of my stuff. Product provided by Nintendo.
Well, here we are. Not too shabby, huh? For a giant beached spaceship, anyway. But, like it or not, this place is our home now. We took the name from the city it was modeled after back on Earth. We call it New Los Angeles. Welcome to NLA.
And so it was that another survivor came to join our band of refugees. Together, we resolved to forge a new way of life here on Mira, come what may. New LA was our beautiful lie to ourselves. Truth is, we were adrift, heading into the unknown. Our native home was gone, swallowed in a shroud of light. And our future was uncertain. We had no idea what fate lay in store for us. Only that we had to keep living in order to see it.
When you find your game and it just clicks with you, and every element, every facet just resonates with you so deeply and completely, that is when you find one of your favorite games of all time. For me, all the way back in 2015, I found one of those games for me, the original version of Xenoblade Chronicles X. But it was a game that was deeply flawed, especially for a kid just like getting into JRPGs. The gameplay and build optimization was confusing to me, and I would come to learn that the game ended with a massive cliffhanger. And for the better part of 10 years, I yearned to find out what would happen to the world of Mira, to the world of Xenoblade Chronicles X. And then on a random Tuesday morning, as I sat down in this very chair to eat my breakfast before starting my day, I saw in my YouTube recommended feed a trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. One of my favorite games of all time that was so influential to my overall imagination was coming back in the year 2025. And not only that, Nintendo provided me a free copy of the game. I do not claim to be unbiased when it comes to Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, and I don't care to be. This game blew me away from start to finish. A return to Mira, a game that I had replayed only months before the announcement of Definitive Edition, mind you. And despite feeling as if I knew this game, Definitive Edition to me felt as if I was playing the game all over again for the very first time, not because of some substantial revision to the formula, not because of some giant new addition. There was an addition, just wasn't until the very end of the experience, but because, in my opinion, Xenoblade Chronicles X is one of the best iterations of the idea of incorporating an open world in a video game that I've ever had the pleasure of seeing and ever had the pleasure of playing. For me, there are two that stand above all others. I have Elden Ring in one corner and Xenoblade X in the other. For these games are masters of the idea of the open world, but in different ways. Elden Ring is all about exploration, finding tidbits of lore and quests that all tie together somehow, and going off on your own journey and just seeing what you find and going off on hunches. That is the beauty of the Elden Ring open world formula. For Xenoblade Chronicles X, it's the beauty of exploration. You and a ragtag group of human survivors find yourselves stranded on this hostile, weird, primitive alien world, and now you have to carve out a spot of that world for humanity's future. It's a world dominated by survival of the fittest, with giant monsters and aliens lurking behind every corner and populating every open field that you find. It's a world that, despite originally being a Wii U game, to me, is more visually striking and beautiful than 99.9% of other games that I've ever played. The aesthetic, the sci-fi feel of Xenoblade X for me is unparalleled. I love it so much. I love exploring every nook and cranny the world has to offer, all the beautiful alien vistas that populate this game world. I love going to all the different zones and just how different and colossal they all feel in comparison to each other. Not to mention the story of humanity's survival in a race against time, against hostile alien worlds, and a depleting battery for the lifehold. The story has a great sense of tension and a great overall feel to it, despite, in terms of overall structure, being so distinct to the other Xenoblade Chronicles games. But to me, that's what gives X its charm. It leans far more into the gameplay side of things, far more into building, far more into customization, far more into the RPG elements of a game. And it's one of those games where you can get through it with a very surface level understanding of the gameplay. You can do it. It might be a bit hard on occasion, but you can do it. And the more you're willing to put in, the more you're willing to learn, the more you're almost willing to experiment, the more the game is willing to reward you with. And when you start to understand how everything works together, how to make a build, how to stack a damage profile, how to mix and match various weapons from different classes to create a build all of your own, it creates one of the most satisfying progression loops I've ever had out of a video game. Because you go from the start where you feel as if you're always on the back foot, always having to keep one eye open no matter where you are, because some high-level mob might jump out at you and chase you down just because you dare to exist in its world. Over time, you become powerful and the tables turn. Eventually, you feel like the walking monster navigating the world of Mira, and everything else better bowed in your very presence and fear your might. Xenoblade X is not the only game to where you go from zero to hero. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But the way that X makes you feel powerful, oh my god. And another reason I put X's open world in the highest of echelons is because there's never been an open world game to me that was able to keep its world feeling fresh and new throughout the lion's share of the experience. What do I mean by this? You start out the game on foot, navigating the world of Mira, navigating these various zones, running and jumping from place to place, finding ways to scale various mountains or cliffs, ducking and dodging high-level monsters that you might find in your way, and the world has this certain giant sense of scale to it. And then eventually at some point you're going to unlock the privilege to pilot a giant freaking robot that you can customize, by the way. You can also deck out your other party members with their own giant robots. And when you hit that point, the entire world changes. Because now you can jump higher, you can run faster, you can also transform into a vehicle, and the scale of the world starts to shrink a bit. But not in a bad way. In a way to where it feels as if all the knowledge and experience you've accumulated in the game up to that point, you can now almost weaponize. You know of certain cliffs, certain hills, certain locations in the game that you could not access before because you couldn't jump high enough or run fast enough to get there. Well, now you can, and now you can scale even faster, or you can just now scale certain mountains you couldn't before. So navigating the world of Mira is completely turned on its head, and the world you had felt so comfortable with before, well, now it starts to feel fresh and new because you're finding new routes to take. Getting from point A to B is now fundamentally different, and many games would stop there. You would get a basic mount, and Bob's your uncle. That's it. That's not where Xenoblade X stops. Because then, at another point in time, you unlock the ability for your Skell, your giant robot, to fly in the air. And now this is when the game truly breaks every chain that was around you. But you are no longer bound to the surface of Mira. You can now soar the very heavens with a theme song playing in the background. Sawano does the music in Xenoblade X, by the way. Yeah, the guy from Attack on Titan. The soundtrack is legendary, and there's a song that plays when you fly around. This was one of the elements they advertised for the game all those years ago when the game originally came out on the Wii U, that if you can see it, you can get there. Because with flying, those floating islands you could probably glance at before, well, now you can go explore them, and there's mobs up there, there's loot up there. Over the course of the game, more bosses spawn in the world, and now you can just fly everywhere. It's another example of the game feeling as if it's rewarding the time you put into it. Because now you're no longer bound by the mountains and the valleys, you are the master of them. And that sense of freedom, that sense of exhilaration, I have never had another game make me feel like that. And I think the setting and theme of the story for Xenoblade X is so utterly captivating by itself, but it's also a story where it just gets better the more you play. And the thing with Definitive Edition was that it brought a few changes to the overall formula for X to the table. A couple new affinity characters, which are party members, that have their own quest lines. And they're cool, don't get me wrong, they're largely based in cut content. But then we get the epilogue. The original story was broken up into 12 chapters. Definitive Edition brings to the table Chapter 13. But don't let that fool you. Chapter 13 has about as much story as Chapters 1 through 12 combined. And I think it's some of Monolith's best work. They introduced, for instance, a character in Chapter 13 that has gone on to become one of my top 3 characters in all of Xenoblade. For those who may not be aware, Xenoblade Chronicles is my favorite video game series of all time. And in one chapter, their new guy instantly becomes one of my favorites. Okay, well, he had to cook a little bit, but when he proves himself, oh my god, I love him. But there's another deeper reason as to why a simple, basically remaster for a game is my game of the year for 2025. Because Xenoblade X Definitive Edition is one of the boldest games I've ever seen. Let me explain. There are 4 mainline entries for Xenoblade Chronicles: Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and X. X originally came out after Xenoblade 1, and for the longest time, many people expected and felt as if the game itself was a spin-off, because that's how it portrayed itself. It was mechanically distinct, visually distinct, and seemingly story-wise had nothing to do with Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3. Monolith then puts out Xenoblade 2 and Xenoblade 3, and then they announced Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. And while if you had a very keen eye like I did, you could have predicted that Xenoblade X was relevant to the stories of Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3. Definitive Edition solidified it. I just want us all to just take a step back, and regardless of your feelings on the matter, I just want us all to just understand how bold of an idea this was. You take a game that was not all that successful because it came out on the Wii freaking U, by the way, for a series that was already very niche with Xenoblade, and then almost 10 years later, you bring it back, and not only do you bring it back, you make it the glue that ties everything together. Not just Xenoblade, but also Xeno Saga, a previous series that we talked about before, and it's like the missing piece of the puzzle that just slots in. What a bold idea. And here's the funny thing. It works. Because like I said, I predicted that X Definitive Edition was going to tie everything together because Monolith are truly masters of the medium. There's a reason Nintendo relies on them so much for a lot of their other games, because Monolith are just simply built different. There's clear thought and care and attention to detail when it comes to the story, from beginning to the middle to all the way to where we're at right now. And it's one of those stories where if you are willing to and you decide to scratch more and more away at it, the more you're going to get out of it. It's a brilliantly well-constructed narrative with some of my favorite characters in the entire medium, some of my favorite moments. And Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, yeah, sure, you can argue that it's a remaster, but for me, it makes the gameplay far more appealing with the inclusion of like quick cooldown, where it speeds the flow of combat up drastically so, which was always like X's biggest weakness. So they addressed the biggest gameplay issue that I had with Xenoblade X. They sprinkle some new stuff here and there, make the options menu in the UI not giga crap, and then at the very end of it all, they put out one of the best chapters I've ever seen them do, and I already hold them in the highest regard. I understand if some people don't want to put a remaster or a remake as their own game of the year. It's why I'm not upset when a lot of outlets put like Expedition 33 as the game of the year. Because if we're talking about a whole new game, yeah, that deserves it. If we're talking about what game I resonated with the most, what game I had the most enjoyment with this year, what game is going to be the most memorable for me, it's Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition every dang day. If you haven't played it, I won't lie and say it's going to be a game for everyone, because it's not. It's not a game without faults, but I think if you're willing to just expand your horizons and you want to get lost in an open world and you want that feeling of adventure, you want that feeling of a journey again, Xenoblade X provides that in spades. I mean, I would recommend all the Xenoblade games. Don't get me wrong. I'm a massive fan of Xenoblade Chronicles overall, and I highly recommend every game there. But if for some reason X has just passed you by, I would recommend giving it a bash. I don't view it to be a game that you should just rush through. I mean, you can if you want, but I think you're kind of missing the forest for the trees there. In a world where a lot of games seem increasingly goal-oriented, like you're going to do A, then B, then C, then D, then E, then F, X is one of those games where it almost wants you to stop and smell the roses, to be willing to slowly engulf yourself in this world of Mira, and the whole host of side characters and side content that X brings to the table here. And I think if you're someone who likes to take their time with a game, X is probably going to be for you. And I loved Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition so much. It's my second favorite game of all time, and it's very close to my number one with Nier Automata. It's very close. It's probably the game with the biggest set of balls that I've ever seen. The decision to say, hey, yeah, this game a lot of people thought was a spinoff. No, it's a mainline entry and it ties everything together. Oh, and by the way, this didn't come out of thin air. We've been foreshadowing this for a long time, and it works. And it makes sense. And the funny thing is, they actually foreshadowed the events of Chapter 13 all the way back in a spin-off game from Xeno Saga. That was a spin-off mobile game with Pied Piper. I'm not even joking about that. It's big, it's bold, it's epic, it's fun. I love Xenoblade, and I hope that one day you will as well. And that is why Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is my game of the year for 2025. A beautiful lie.
We call this planet Mira. You won't find it on any star chart. But it's our new home.
And here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your favorite game from 2025. It could be a game that came out in 2025 or an old game that you started playing or just replayed or revisited. What game did you enjoy the most in 2025? I would love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your stories. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. It smells like winter sale for Steam is on the docket. Come on, you know I had to make a video giving my recommendations and just games you should keep an eye out for the Steam winter sale, because there's a lot of games here and a massive discount. And also some relatively new games that are being discounted to be far more reasonable in price. Want to find out more? You should check out this video right here for more. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.